Breaking the chains. The spires of House Vexthor pierced the violet skies of Centauri Prime like crystalline daggers, their surfaces refracting the light of 3 setting suns. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the grand reception hall, her simple gray medical uniform a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings. The hall's walls rippled with bioluminescent patterns, a display of wealth that could have funded a small hospital for a year. Before her, perched on a throne of living metal, sat High Lord Vexthor. His iridescent scales shifted colors with each breath, a trait of the Centaurian elite. 4 empty eyes studied her with the cold calculation of someone examining an insect. You claim your neural restoration techniques can help any species. His voice carried the distinctive harmonic overtones of his race, even those as evolutionarily superior as Centaurians. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her hands tightened imperceptibly around her medical tablet. Neural science doesn't recognize evolutionary hierarchies, High Lord. The basic principles remain constant across all sentient species. A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembled court. Several of the noble houses had sent representatives, their interest piqued by rumors of the human doctor who had successfully treated conditions their own medical technology had declared hopeless. Such arrogance. Vexthor's secondary mouth curved in what might have been amusement. Though I suppose that's typical of your species. He gestured with one crystalline-tipped hand, and 2 servants glided forward. Between them, a hovering platform bearing what appeared to be a cocoon of silvery threads. The threads parted, revealing a younger Centaurian. Her scales were dull, lacking the iridescence of her kin, and her lower body was encased in a complex framework of support structures. But it was her eyes that caught Sarah's attention. All 4 of them blazed with an intensity that belied her physical condition. My daughter, Zora Vex. Once she was to lead our house's military forces. Now she is. Vexthor's tone dripped with dismissal. Unsuitable. The damage to her neural pathways is extensive. Our finest medical minds have declared her condition irreversible. Sarah approached the platform slowly, her tablet already scanning. May I? She asked Zora directly, ignoring protocol. The young Centaurian's eyes narrowed, but she gave a slight nod. The scan results made Sarah's breath catch. The damage was deliberate. Precise surgical cuts disguised as accident trauma. Someone had wanted to ensure Zora would never recover. She kept her face carefully blank as she continued her examination. Well, human. Vexthor's impatience cut through the silence. Can your primitive methods help her? Sarah straightened, meeting the High Lord's gaze. Yes, but treatment will require her to come to my facility on New Singapore Station. The rehabilitation process is intensive. Perfect. Vexthor's scales rippled with pleasure. Remove this embarrassment from my sight. If you succeed, you'll be well compensated. If you fail, his tone suggested failure wouldn't be an option. Sarah would survive. Later, as their shuttle broke atmosphere, Sarah studied her patient. Zara sat in dignified silence, but her hands trembled slightly. They didn't want you to know. Zara spoke suddenly, her voice carrying none of the harmonics of her father's. About the deliberate nature of my injuries. Sarah's eyes widened. You knew. Of course. I commanded our house's military intelligence division. But proving it. She laughed bitterly. Difficult to gather evidence when you can't leave your chambers. Why tell me? Zara's eyes fixed on her with laser intensity. Because you saw. You examined me as a person, not a problem to be disposed of. And because I've studied you, Dr. Chen. Your success rate isn't just about medical skill. It's about understanding the politics of healing. Sarah felt a smile tugging at her lips. Most of my patients face some kind of opposition to their recovery. Though usually not quite so aristocratic. They think they're rid of me. Zara's scales flickered with something that might have been anticipation. But they forgot the most important lesson of military intelligence. Which is? Never give your enemy exactly what they want. You might find out they wanted something entirely different. Zara's eyes gleamed. Tell me, Doctor, How do you feel about helping start a revolution? Sarah thought about the scan results, about the countless others who might have suffered similar accidents among the Centaurian elite. Her smile widened. I think that might be just what the doctor ordered. The shuttle streaked toward New Singapore Station, leaving behind the glittering spires and deadly politics of Centauri Prime. But both women knew they weren't really leaving it behind. They were just preparing for the next phase of a war that had been brewing for generations. A war that would begin not with weapons, but with the simple act of helping someone walk again. The price of pride. New Singapore Station hung in space like a gleaming spider's web, its interconnected medical facilities and research labs spanning nearly 20 kilometers. In Treatment Chamber 17, Dr. Sarah Chen frowned at the holographic display of Zaravex's neural network. They severed your primary motor control pathways here, and here. Sarah's finger traced the glowing lines. But they left the secondary networks intact, almost like they wanted to ensure I'd retain just enough function to be aware of what I'd lost. Zara finished. Her scales had taken on a healthier sheen in the 3 weeks since leaving Centauri Prime, though the support framework still encased her lower body. It's crueler than simple paralysis, Sarah muttered, making adjustments to the neural interface. They wanted you to suffer. My elder sister always did have a flair for the dramatic. Zara's secondary mouth curved in a bitter smile, especially when eliminating competition for the throne. Sarah's hands stilled. Your sister did this. Tavravex. Father's heir apparent. Zara's eyes focused on a distant point. She arranged the training accident during my command qualification trials. Everyone knew, but no one dared speak against House Vexthor's chosen successor. And your father? Convenient to believe the lie. A crippled daughter is less threatening to his legacy than one murdered by her own sister. Zara's scales rippled with suppressed emotion. Pride is everything to Centaurian nobility. Better to pretend I simply failed than admit his house is rotting from within. Sarah resumed her work, carefully initializing the hybrid neural pathways they'd developed, a combination of human biotech and Centaurian crystalline processors. Well, their pride is about to cost them everything. These test results, she grinned. Zara, the secondary networks are responding even better than I'd hoped. With the new interfaces, we could have you walking within. A sudden alarm cut through the air. Red emergency lights began pulsing along the corridor outside. Security breach in Medical Wing C, the station's AI announced. Unknown biological agent detected. Emergency containment protocols initiated. Sarah's tablet lit up with warnings. That's not possible. Our containment systems are. She froze, staring at the readout. This is a Centaurian neurotoxin. Military grade. Tevra. Zara's voice was ice. She's making sure Father's investment in my recovery fails spectacularly. Her eyes met Sarah's. The toxin. It targets neural tissue. Sarah nodded grimly, already moving to secure the room. Specifically engineered to destroy the kind of neural regeneration we're attempting. Anyone undergoing neural treatment would die painfully and appear to have rejected the procedure. Zara's analytical mind was already racing ahead, the perfect way to discredit your work and ensure no other Centaurian nobles seek your help. The ventilation systems shut down as containment fields snapped into place. Sarah's fingers flew across her console, accessing station security feeds. 3 infiltrators in medical gear. They're heading this way. How long until station security responds? 10 minutes minimum. The toxin is interfering with internal sensors. They'll have to sweep manually. Zara's eyes narrowed. Too long. Doctor, I need you to disengage my support framework. What? No, you're not ready. The neural connections haven't fully stabilized. I commanded Centaurian Special Forces for 8 years. Zara's scales began to pulse with a dangerous light. The framework is the only thing preventing my body's natural defense mechanisms from activating. Sarah hesitated. The strain could collapse the new neural pathways completely. Better collapsed than destroyed by toxin. Zora's four eyes fixed on her with fierce intensity. "Trust me, Doctor. You've given me back more than they tried to take." The sound of boots in the corridor grew closer. Sarah made her decision, fingers flying across the controls. The framework's locks disengaged with a soft hiss. What happened next seemed to defy physics. Zara's scales erupted with blinding light, her body flowing like liquid mercury. As she rose from the medical bed, crystalline structures burst from her skin, natural Centaurian armor their nobles had evolved over millennia of assassination attempts. The door exploded inward. 3 figures in stolen medical gear rushed in, weapons raised. They found themselves facing a fully armored Centaurian warrior, her body glowing with bioluminescent rage. "Send my sister a message." Zara's voice resonated with deadly harmonics. "The cripple she tried to create. She's dead, and I'm coming home." The fight was brief, brutal, and decidedly one-sided. When station security finally arrived, they found 3 very unconscious assassins, a contained neurotoxin threat, and a Centaurian noble calmly allowing Dr. Chen to reattach monitoring equipment. "Neural pathway stability at 82%, Sarah announced, checking her readings with a mixture of relief and amazement. The combat response actually helped integrate the new connections. "How did you know?" "Military intelligence, remember." Zara's scales slowly settled back to their normal state. "Sometimes the best defense is hidden in what your enemy thinks is your greatest weakness." She paused. "Thank you for trusting me." Sarah smiled, already documenting the unexpected breakthrough. "Thank you for trusting me first, though next time you plan to demonstrate classified Centaurian military capabilities, maybe a little warning." Now where's the fun in that? For the first time since they'd met, Zara's laugh held genuine warmth. "Besides, we're just getting started. Wait until Tevra discovers what else I've learned to do without my support framework." As Sarah began analyzing the combat data, she couldn't help but smile. The nobles of House Vexthor had spent generations cultivating their image of superior evolution. How deliciously ironic that their greatest humiliation would come from the very capabilities they'd forgotten they had, all because they were too proud to believe a primitive human doctor could succeed where they had failed. Mind over matter. The nobles of House Vexthor have forgotten their own history. Zara's voice echoed through the training chamber as she moved through a series of complex combat forms. Her scales flickered with bioluminescent patterns that matched her movements, a display that would have been impossible just weeks ago. Dr. Sarah Chen monitored the neural readings from her station, still amazed by how the hybrid technology had evolved. "Your people were warriors before they were aristocrats." "Precisely." Zara completed a particularly challenging sequence, her movements fluid and precise. "Our crystalline biology wasn't engineered for beauty. It was armor, weapons, survival. But generations of peace made them value appearance over function." The training chamber's holographic opponents materialized, exact replicas of Centaurian noble guards. Zara engaged them with lethal grace, her body's natural crystalline structures shifting and adapting with each strike. "Your neural adaptation is remarkable," Sarah noted, studying the data streams. "The human stem cell grafts aren't just repairing the damage. They're enhancing your natural abilities. Because you understood something my people forgot." Zora disabled another opponent with a move that seemed to defy physics. "Adaptation isn't weakness, it's survival." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from station security. Sarah's expression darkened as she read the message. 3 more noble houses have reported training accidents among their heirs, all with neural damage suspiciously similar to yours. Zara's scales pulsed with anger. Tevra's expanding her power base. Anyone who might challenge her succession ends up conveniently disabled. Sarah's fingers flew across her console, analyzing the reported injuries. But she made a mistake. "The pattern's too obvious now. We have proof." "Proof means nothing without power to act on it." Zara deactivated the training program, moving to examine the data herself. "In Centaurian politics, truth without strength is just another weapon for your enemies." Then we'll have to give truth some teeth. Sarah pulled up another file, a carefully encrypted transmission she'd received that morning. Remember those medical scans I've been sharing with colleagues across the galaxy? They're not just doctors. Some of them have interesting connections. Zara's 4 eyes widened as she read the message. The Galactic Rights Commission. They're willing to investigate. With enough evidence of systematic discrimination against disabled Centaurians, they'll do more than investigate. They could impose sanctions, trade restrictions. Sarah's smile was fierce. Hit the nobles where it really hurts, their profit margins. Tevra will try to block any investigation. The noble houses will close ranks. Let them. Sarah's confidence was unshaken. Because while they're watching their borders for official investigators, they'll miss what's happening right under their noses. She activated another display, showing messages from dozens of Centaurian medical facilities. Each one requested information about her neural restoration techniques. Each came from doctors tired of watching their patients suffer for political gain. A revolution doesn't always need armies, Sarah said softly. Sometimes it just needs people brave enough to heal. Zara studied the messages, her tactical mind already seeing the possibilities. A network of medical professionals, all practicing your techniques. The nobles couldn't stop them all without crippling their own healthcare system. And every patient they heal becomes living proof of what's possible. Sarah's eyes met Zara's. Your sister wants to use disability as a weapon. Fine. We'll turn healing into an even better one. Their planning session was interrupted by another alert, this one from Sarah's research team. The doctor's expression shifted from concern to triumph as she read the results. Speaking of weapons, she brought up a new neural scan. Remember how I said your combat responses were actually improving neural integration? We finally figured out why. The display showed Zora's neural network during battle, overlaid with energy readings from her crystalline structures. Your natural armor doesn't just protect you, it amplifies neural signals. The more you fight, the stronger the new pathways become. So every time Tevra sends assassins, she's literally making you stronger. Sarah couldn't hide her satisfaction. I don't suppose your sister took many biology classes during her political education. Zara's scales rippled with predatory amusement. Tevra always preferred manipulation to actual science. She thought that made her clever. Then she's about to learn a hard lesson about underestimating both Centaurian biology and human innovation. Sarah began composing messages to her network of allied doctors, ready to show the noble houses what real power looks like. Zara's response was to activate the training program again, this time at its highest difficulty. Her body moved like living crystal, each motion a perfect blend of ancient Centaurian combat arts and enhanced neural precision. Doctor, she said as she engaged the holographic opponents, I've been ready since the day they tried to break me. But now, her scales blazed with controlled power. Now I'm not just ready, I'm evolved. In the privacy of her office later that night, Sarah added another entry to her research log. Day 47 of the Vexthor treatment. Patient continues to exceed all projected recovery metrics. Note, when treating warrior species, never underestimate the therapeutic value of righteous vengeance. Additional note, maybe don't include that last bit in the official medical journals. Rising storm. News travels fast in the galactic nobility, but truth travels faster through the desperate. Within 3 months of Sarah and Zora's breakthrough, underground medical clinics began appearing across Centaurian space, each one staffed by doctors who had secretly trained in human neural restoration techniques, each treating nobles and commoners alike who had been discarded by their houses. On New Singapore Station, Sarah reviewed the latest reports from her growing network. 17 more successful treatments this week. Your sister's probably having fits. Tevra's doing worse than that, Zora replied, her scales shimmering with satisfaction as she examined intelligence feeds. She's bleeding credits trying to track down every clinic, but shut down one. And 3 more appear, Sarah finished. Amazing what people can accomplish when they stop being afraid. Their conversation was interrupted by a priority transmission. The message was brief, but its implications were staggering. House Krelvor recovered. Willing to testify. Evidence secured. Zara's 4 eyes widened. House Krelvor, they're one of the most powerful families on the council. If they're willing to break ranks, the whole power structure starts to crack. Sarah said, but Tevra won't let this happen without a fight. As if summoned by her words, the station's alerts blared to life. Multiple unauthorized ships detected entering station space. Centaurian military configurations detected. Sarah's hands flew across her console, accessing security feeds. 7 warships. Tevra's private fleet. Subtle as ever, sister dear, Zora's scales began to pulse with combat rhythms. She's desperate enough to risk an interstellar incident. The station's defenders moved to intercept, but the Centaurian ships had positioned themselves with tactical precision. Their target was clear, the medical facility where Sarah and Zora had pioneered their breakthrough. Station shields at maximum, the AI announced, but they won't withstand a concentrated assault from vessels of that class. Sarah began rapidly transferring critical data through secured channels to her network. They're not here to destroy the station. They want our research, our treatment protocols. And us, Zara added grimly. Dead or alive, depending on Tevra's mood. The first shots weren't weapons fire, but rather precision electromagnetic pulses designed to disable the station's defensive systems. Tevra clearly wanted to minimize collateral damage. A noble attacking a civilian medical station would face consequences, even with her family's influence. But Zara was smiling, her scales blazing with anticipation. Doctor, remember how you said every patient we heal becomes living proof? Sarah nodded, still working to secure their data. Yes, but I don't see how that helps us right now. Because you're thinking like a doctor. Zara opened an encrypted channel of her own. I'm thinking like a military commander who spent the last 3 months coordinating with other recovered patients. The space around the station suddenly blazed with new energy signatures as ships dropped out of FTL. Dozens of them, ranging from personal yachts to merchant vessels, each one commanded by a former patient or staffed by sympathetic crews. You didn't just build a medical network, Sarah realized, watching in amazement as the ships moved into defensive formations. You built an army. Better, Zara's voice carried the harmonics of pure satisfaction. I built a revolution, one that remembers what our crystalline biology was meant for. The approaching ships began to glow, their hulls suddenly encased in living crystal, the combined power of dozens of recovered Centaurians using their natural abilities in concert. What had been civilian vessels were now armored with the same material that made Centaurian warships nearly invulnerable. Tevra thought she could keep power by breaking people. Zara opened a channel to all ships. But she forgot the most important lesson of evolution. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Sarah finished softly, watching as her patients turned warriors moved to protect the station that had given them back their lives. The next few hours would reshape Centaurian politics forever. Tevra's fleet, faced with opponents they couldn't legally fire upon without declaring war on their own houses, was forced to withdraw. The sight of disabled nobles commanding ships with precision and power sent shockwaves through the aristocracy. But it was the data Sarah had distributed, proof of systematic discrimination and attempted murder, that struck the killing blow. By the time the Galactic Rights Commission arrived, they found not just evidence, but a fully organized resistance movement led by the very people the noble houses had tried to silence. In her private log that night, Sarah added a new entry, note to self, when treating warriors for neuromuscular trauma, factor in the possibility that successful recovery may lead to impromptu space battles. Additional note, really need to update the patient warning forms. Beyond gravity. The crystalline spires of House Vexthor no longer pierced the violet skies of Centauri Prime alone. New towers had risen in the months since the Battle of New Singapore Station. Medical centers, research facilities, and training academies. Their surfaces didn't just refract sunlight. They pulsed with the combined bioluminescence of hundreds of recovered Centaurians, a constant reminder that change had come to stay. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the same grand reception hall where her journey had begun, but everything was different now. The bioluminescent patterns on the walls no longer displayed mere wealth. They showed real-time neural activity maps, teaching tools for the next generation of hybrid human-Centaurian medical techniques. "Quite a change from your last visit," Zora observed, her scales rippling with quiet pride. She no longer needed any support framework. Her movements were more fluid and precise than even before her injury. "Though I believe you're standing in exactly the same spot. Your father's throne is missing," Sarah noted, gesturing to where the imposing seat had dominated the room. Melted down, Zora's secondary mouth curved in a smile. The crystalline material made excellent neural conductors for the new pediatric ward. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a delegation, representatives from every major house in Centaurian space, led by none other than Tevra Vex herself. The former heir-apparent scales were dulled, her movements stiff with suppressed rage as she approached her sister. "The council has reviewed the evidence," Tevra announced, her harmonics flat and controlled. "They find the charges of systematic discrimination and attempted murder substantiated." Each word seemed to cause her physical pain. "And," Zora's voice held no triumph, only quiet certainty. "And in light of your successful demonstration of enhanced Centaurian capabilities through human medical innovation, they have approved the formation of the new evolution protocol." Tevra's eyes couldn't quite meet her sister's. "You will oversee the integration of these treatments into all medical facilities across Centaurian space." Sarah watched the exchange with carefully hidden satisfaction. The evidence they'd gathered had been damning, but it was the display of power by the recovered patients that had truly forced the noble houses to change. Nothing earned Centaurian respect quite like superior strength. "There is one more matter," Tevra continued, each word clearly rehearsed. "House Vexthor requires new leadership, someone who understands both our traditional strength and the necessity of adaptation." A murmur ran through the assembled nobles as Tevra slowly, formally, knelt before her younger sister. The gesture was both submission and acknowledgement, the old guard yielding to the new. But Zora didn't immediately accept. Instead, she turned to Sarah. "Doctor, what was it you said when we first began? About neural science not recognizing evolutionary hierarchies?" Sarah smiled, remembering. "The basic principles remain constant across all sentient species." "Exactly." Zora turned back to the assembled nobles, her scales blazing with purpose. "I will lead House Vexthor, but not as your superior. Our strength comes not from dominance, but from adaptation, from healing, from change." She gestured to the medical displays around them. "Look at what we've achieved by combining human innovation with Centaurian biology. Imagine what else we might discover if we finally abandon our pride and embrace true evolution." The nobles stirred uncomfortably, but none could deny the evidence of their own eyes. The damaged ones they had cast aside now stood among the strongest of their species. The primitive human medical techniques they had scorned had unlocked capabilities they had forgotten they possessed. "Your titles mean nothing," Zora continued. "Your claims of superiority are dust. From now on, House Vexthor measures nobility not by birth, but by contribution. By the lives we heal, the barriers we break, the future we build together." She turned to Sarah again. "Dr. Chen, will you help us establish the first joint human-Centaurian medical academy? We have much to teach each other." Sarah's grin was answer enough. "I thought you'd never ask." Later, as they watched the three suns set from the highest spire of the newly renamed Vexthor Medical Center, Sarah noticed Zora's scales displaying an unusual pattern. "That's new," she commented, recognizing complex neural frequencies in the bioluminescent display. "A reminder," Zora explained. "The pattern shows the exact frequency of the neural damage they tried to use to destroy me. I keep it visible to remind everyone. What they intended as a weakness became our greatest strength. Antevra, assigned to oversee our outreach to other species with crystalline biology. If she's going to learn humility, she might as well do it helping others. Zara's scales shifted to display the successful treatment statistics from the past year. Though I did make sure she has an excellent human medical supervisor. Sarah laughed. You know, when I first developed these neural restoration techniques, I never imagined they'd lead to all this. That's because you thought like a doctor. Zara's 4 eyes sparkled with amusement. You wanted to heal bodies, but what you really did was heal a society. We did it together, Sarah corrected. Human innovation, Centaurian strength, and enough spite to fuel a revolution, Zara added with a grin. Never underestimate the motivational power of proving people wrong. As night fell, the medical center blazed with the combined bioluminescence of hundreds of graduates practicing their new abilities. Each light represented a life restored, a barrier broken, a step toward a future where no one would be cast aside for being damaged. In her final log entry for the Vexthor project, Sarah wrote, "Treatment success extends far beyond neural restoration. Patient has exceeded all therapeutic goals, revolutionized an entire society, and redefined the meaning of both healing and strength. Prognosis, boundless." Note, maybe it's time to update more than just the patient warning forms. Maybe it's time to update everything we think we know about the power of healing. And in the darkness above Centauri Prime, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if in agreement that some changes transcend even gravity itself.